Hello and welcome to video 4, lesson 2.2 of the English Literature Poetry Focus on Remains by Simon Armitage. And today's question is, how do I select and analyse key quotations? So we are zooming our focus in a little bit today, and having looked at themes in the previous video, now it's time for us to think about how do we find the quotations from the poem that best allow us to discuss those themes. Now this is a piece of knowledge, a skill that you'll be able to use time and again, no matter what poem you're looking at, no matter what piece of prose or piece of text you're reading. This is really important stuff. So we'll get straight into it, get our definitions done and move on. And we will learn how to find and use the best quotations from a piece of poetry. Today's keyword is analysis, a detailed examination of the parts that make up a whole and the way they fit together, to take something apart to understand it more deeply. So you may dismantle a phone to understand how it was put together and what all the different pieces are. We might well use a magnifying glass to zoom in on key pieces of information and to record that information. So analysis in poetry terms really means picking out a key phrase and going deeply into that, looking at even down to an individual word level to make sure that we are dragging out as much meaning as possible and also backing up the points that we make through that analysis. And the second word to be really familiar with today is symbolise. And to symbolise means to mean, represent an idea or a concept. So usually an object or an action that represents more than what it is on the surface. So if we see here the act of the placing of a wedding ring on somebody's finger. Now it's just popping a bit of metal on somebody's finger, but symbolically it means a promise for to be with somebody for a lifetime. It means a promise to be true to that person, to support them. And the wearing of the ring is a way of showing daily to everyone around you that I am married, I have made that promise. On the other hand, here on this side we've got justice, and she is loaded with symbolism. The scales in which all are weighed equally, but will find a fair judgment. The sword that represents justice being given out, the swift response. And the blindfold, which is justice should be blind, regardless of who you are, where you're from, or what you have. You all should be treated equally by justice itself. Now, whether or not that is the case, whether that's what people experience, that is the ideal of justice, and that is what this statue symbolises. So the analysis process itself is one that we break down into 3 steps: show, suggest, and symbolise. And you can see our good friend the iceberg here again to represent how this takes us deeper step by step. When analysing a key quotation, depth is key. We really want to go as far into it as we can. And so we start off with shows, what the quotation is describing or referring to, the obvious explicit information that helps us to just make sense on a surface level of that poem. Following that, of course, it suggests, and here we drag inferences from the word or the phrase, possible meanings, different interpretations. We'll usually be able to say more than one thing here, and we should. Some key words to use here are might, perhaps, could. It might mean this, or perhaps it means that. It could also mean option number 3. And by using words like that, you're able to suggest multiple answers inside one answer. And that's a really effective way of making your point and being able to explore the poem in an interesting way. At the most deep level, we look at symbolising and what this word or phrase or quotation symbolises. And that's how it links to and represents a theme or the big idea of the poem. So the 4 themes we explored in the last video, guilt, violence, the experience of soldiers, the effect of war, our quotations will ultimately link back to one of those themes. And when we can do that, when we can spot that and use that, then we are going to be in a really effective way of analysing poems. Here's an example. I've chosen the quotation, very first line of the poem, on another occasion. What does this show? Well, it shows that the first line of the poem, it was common to go out on patrols, and this was, as far as the soldier knew, just another ordinary day, another occasion, off we go out. So that's just the basic, it's setting the story up, and there we're on the surface here, but that's important to show that I understand what I'm being told about here. And you'll notice how much bigger suggests is than shows, and that's correct, that's as it should be. It suggests the soldiers were used to being under threat and dealing with possible violence regularly. It has a casual tone, which might tell us that they accepted the risk or maybe had become numb to it. So I'm using these magic words that let me give out lots of ideas at once. It also suggests that danger was everywhere, because they often had occasions when they were out in Basra dealing with threats. Another occasion. Perhaps it also tells us that the soldiers were being overworked and shouldn't have been out so often. So I'm using the knowledge that I've already got about the PTSD that Truman suffered, about the situations that he was in, to inform my ideas here. Again, which is as it should be, bringing all my knowledge together. And then again, it's shorter again, so you see how suggest is the biggest part of this. But here I'm saying in Symbolise, this can symbolise the experience of the soldiers having to deal with constant stress and danger, and the fact that the army wasn't looking after them by giving them time to rest and recover. So here, experience of the soldiers, that is one of the themes. That's why it's been highlighted there. And by bringing that Symbolise section back to the themes, I'm closing the loop of my answer, and I'm demonstrating to anybody reading my answer that I've got a real deep understanding of this poem. I know what I'm doing, I know what I'm talking about, and I've thought it through. And that's the best way to impress anybody with your academic skills, by showing them that you've thought about it and now you're presenting your ideas. So it's time for you to practice that analysis. Shows, suggests, and symbolises. Pick a quotation and go step by step through this. It doesn't need to be written out as a full paragraph. In fact, it shouldn't be. Bullet points, a list, mind map, however suits you. But remember that suggests needs to be multiple ideas. Use might, perhaps, could. And symbolises should link back to the themes that we explored in the previous video. So get your old notes out and have them ready to look at. I want you to choose 2 quotes from the 4 that are on this page here. Now, these quotes can be linked to at least one of the themes. I've chosen them specifically so they can be, so you can do this. And if it feels difficult, then good, because that means that you are developing those skills. Push yourself to get more in the suggests box to make the link. Don't be satisfied with just a brief and basic answer. Complete 2 practice analyses. Try and pick 2 that will go with different themes. And give yourself 20 minutes to complete both of those. So 10 minutes apiece, or however you want to split it up. But after 20 minutes, you should be done and you should be finished.